Oh, yeah, I don't know what's going on with the intro, but hey, we're we're just gonna go live. Hey, it's a live show. Something's happening, but either way, welcome into the Gridiron Uncensored podcast. We'll skip the pleasantries, I guess, of our beautiful work that our media team did. Me, it was a great intro. I'll tell you that. Either way, welcome to the Gridiron Uncensored podcast. We thank you guys for tuning in. Blake, myself tonight. Obviously, a lot to talk about. Titled it "Civil War: College Football Civil War Continues," because I feel like there's a huge divide in what people feel needs to happen to this sport. A lot of doom and gloom, a lot of hope. So we'll talk a little bit about that later. But first, we're going to jump into the games, and we're going to talk about really mainly the playoffs. A couple of the other bowl games that we covered on the last show. You see them on the screen right now. Props to Sam Houston and to JMU for getting their first bowl wins. That's pretty awesome. Really happy for those programs. UNLV getting a good bowl win there. Memphis also getting a win. I mean, that's just great for the group of five schools. I know with the portal and everything, teams are changing. They're going through these turnover, but still being able to go out there. And I feel like the group of five might deal with the losses a little bit more than some of these Power Five programs. So good for them on the week. Blake, anything about those games before we start talking about the playoff games and all the fuss about that?
No, I mean they pretty much went as expected. I'm glad to see Sam Houston get that win though.
Yeah, I know Blake's got a special connection with them due to College Football 25 and playing that on the Dynasty. So that's been pretty fun. Looking at getting into these games in the playoffs. Really, we'll start off. It was a Friday night game. Everybody I thought I was pretty excited about it myself. But Notre Dame versus Indiana. And again, we'll talk about seeding and all that stuff later. Right now, we're just going to talk about the games and discuss them. Started off, and again, we didn't know how Indiana would come out and play. It's in state. It's another big game. The first one, they seemed to choke it away against Ohio State really early, with the miscues on special teams, even though they had a really great first drive, and then they blew it against Ohio State. Ohio State choked them out. And then you go into Notre Dame. Okay, how are they going to overcome what happened on the last time? Are they going to be able to go toe-to-toe with Notre Dame, who's a solid team, regardless of whatever else, happened during the regular season? They are a good team. So we look at, how they went out, and it was immediate. Like Notre Dame was just locking them down. Blake, what were your thoughts on this battle? Notre Dame just keeps on trucking.
Well, all season, a lot of people have hated on Notre Dame. Like we're going to talk about later, you can't always look at the score. You got to look at what happens on the field. Mm-hmm. And I've thought Notre Dame has looked like a solid team all year. I know they got the ugly loss to Northern Illinois, sure. But if you just look at the way, especially the way they run the football, they're very strong up front on both sides of the ball. Their secondary's been fairly solid most of the season. I like the way they play. They play mistake-free football. They're a run-first team. Riley Leonard, when he has to throw it, he can do just good enough. He's more of a game manager. He's not like a flashy, Lamar or anything like that, but he can run the ball when needed as well. And that's exactly what they did to Indiana. They kept it on the ground, had 200 yards on the ground between three different backs. Leonard was involved in some of the runs, and then he threw for over or right at 200 yards and a touchdown. And then that defense they kept getting to Rourke, and it was, he couldn't do nothing. And I don't think the game was as close as the score shows because Notre Dame manhandled Indiana the entire game. They got the late touchdown, the onside kick. It made it look a little better, but in reality, Notre Dame was just the more physical team, and Indiana really never had a chance in that game.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier about the Northern Illinois loss, and I dogged on them myself just because that's a horrible loss.
It is.
I know they won a bowl game today, like whatever, it's a bad loss. But it doesn't mean I didn't think the team was like good. I just didn't think necessarily their ranking, whatever. But when you look at the team, they have improved every week. They've gotten better. And like you said, this game, they were very physical. Even when Jeremiah Love was injured, he came out of the game. He punched out, what was it, 98-yard touchdown run, the longest ever in a 12-team playoff. I don't know if that's ever going to get beaten.
I don't know. Well, I did think something else that was interesting is they're both in the same state, and they've only played each other 30 times.
Yeah,
and I mean that's not a lot.
It is
over a 120-year period, but
yeah, it's weird how it plays out like that. But I mean, Indiana's they've had it rough in the football field, and they've really turned it on. This year was great. Now, granted, they did play a weaker schedule in the Big Ten, but still they were able to turn it around. And their preseason total, I think, was only 5.5. So they really good on them for getting the playoffs. But Notre Dame just outclassed them really in this match. And like you said, I mean, they held them to, I think it was 2.3 yards per carry is what I'm looking on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then passing wise, I just felt like the game plan for Indiana was really lackluster. Like every drive just seemed off. I mean, Notre Dame was sitting with like a one high, it just, I don't know.
Rourke never looked settled to me. And they pointed it out in especially in the first half, all his throws were high. But even when he would get going, it's like they'd get inside like the 30-yard line and just turn over. Couldn't get first downs. I mean, some of it's Notre Dame. They was causing disruption on the line of scrimmage, even though they wasn't getting to Rourke. You could tell he was never comfortable in the pocket. And I mean, Notre Dame's got some big dudes up front.
Oh, they do.
They was pushing that line back for Indiana.
And I'll say on Indiana's part though, and this is where it comes down to game. Football is about preparation, execution, right? Matchups, and they were in there. I think this is still a fine team. I don't think Indiana's horrible. I don't think that they don't deserve to be anywhere in the whatever. I just think they're just outmatched, and preparation from the coaching staff for Notre Dame, I think was top notch, because every cornerback played these back shoulder passes that Rourke was trying to do. And it was like almost every pass was like back shoulder along the sideline. None of them were just deep. Hey, send your guy down to go get it. It was just the whole game plan just didn't feel right. But when it came down to Indiana defensively, I thought their defensive their run defense did really well. Outside of that one long run, they held them pretty well. I mean, 2.9 per carry for Price, 2.7 for Leonard. Williams was the only one that had 6, but that was on 4 carries. So just one of those things that I think they did do well, and I think they can do well. It's just Rourke was off, and quarterback play was huge in this first week. I mean, you look at when we move on to the next one. I guess we can, because Notre Dame locked it down. They did great. They did suffer an injury, which sucks. I hate seeing that, but again, people were saying, "Hey, it's better to to get a first round game than have a bye. It's better to be the 5th seed or whatever." I disagree, man. Nobody wants to play that extra game and deal with injuries. It's horrible.
And I don't think they've got a clear path. I mean, they've got to go play Georgia now. You know. I mean, that's not an easy route to the championship.
Exactly. Even without Beck, and we'll talk about that when we get to there. But let's move on. Let's talk a little Penn State, SMU. And this one, to me, when it started, I was excited for this one because I liked SMU. I liked Jennings throughout the year. I thought he'd played pretty well. But when they got out there, he was in his own head. He was seeing goes. Dude was odd. He was out of it. When I felt the rest of the team initially was playing pretty strong. Their defense was stopping them. Alar was doing a lot of things where he blow horrible passes. I thought that, okay, Drew Alar's inability to do this game is going to keep SMU in it, because I know Penn State's got a strong defense. But Jennings just, god dang, dude, Blake, go ahead.
Offensively, not impressed with Penn State offensively. I don't know that I've ever used the word impressive and offense in the same sentence with Penn State. Defense did everything for them in this game. The 2 pick sixes in the first half
Yeah.
I mean, just immediately, and you could tell it was probably a mixture of the atmosphere. Jennings was not his normal self, but
Yeah.
some of that is he just hasn't faced the defense like Penn State has. So, I mean, when Clemson is probably the toughest defense he's faced, and they got demolished on the ground by Texas, there was
Yeah.
just never a chance for SMU in this game. I think the defense was just too much for Penn State and I thought that was going to be the case to begin with.
Yeah. And really it was the defense of SMU stood up for a while there. They did as much as
Yeah,
they can, but they said when you turn the ball over 3 times, short fields, pick sixes, I mean that's just there's no way. It's very hard for a good team to overcome that. It's hard when you're it's even harder when you're outclassed. And
yeah,
SMU was in that realm. When I think about, Michigan versus TCU a couple years ago, 2 pick sixes early from JJ. But that team I thought was good enough, and they showed it. They were able to get right back in the game all the way to the end. It was a battle back and forth. They scored. SMU was done. Like the wind was out of the sails, and you got into that corner of the end zone. That side where the student section was. Dude, that stadium
yep.
was loud. It was rocking.
Well, how many times did they get inside the red zone and couldn't convert on fourth downs, couldn't
Yeah.
get points? I mean, they was inside the 20-yard
Oh yeah.
line 3 or 4 times and walked away with nothing.
There was
I mean,
multiple
it's
opportunities for them to
yeah,
get back. They just the moment was like just too big,
yep,
and then like you said, the penalties, the offsides, the false starts,
yep,
trying to change the play going into the heat of the crowd.
yeah,
It did not make sense. So
yep.
SMU ended up getting smacked around, but we'll see what they go moving on from here. But I think Jennings is fine. I think he just needs to settle. He'll have next year to do that. Anything else on this one before we move on? Talk a little Texas
Yeah.
Clemson. This one was a good one here, and I think club me in the face is what Trevor would call him. But I think people owe that man an apology. He's had a
Yeah.
really good year, and he kept them in this game. Blake, Texas obviously found a way to pull it out. But how do you feel on this one?
Well, this is another one. I don't think the game was as close as the score makes it look. Texas ran the ball at will on Clemson.
Yeah,
And when I got to looking into it, Clemson has the 90th ranked rushing yards per play in the country. And this is a team that just a few years ago, their defensive line, they were putting 2 to 3 players every season into the NFL off of the front. And look at them now. I mean, they gave up 300 yards on the ground.
yeah,
Jaden Blue, I mean, he played lights out. He had 2 really nice runs in this game. You didn't have to see anything really flashy from Texas offensively. I mean, they got it done on the ground. There was really nothing Clemson could do to stop it. But
yeah,
Klubnik, I mean, they did have their little rally there at the end, but
yeah.
still, I mean, Texas come right back out, gashed them, and just
And
silenced it.
yeah, the outside runs killed them.
Yeah,
And I feel like you're getting hit like this all game long. You think there'd be some sort of adjustment, and maybe they did. They tried to, but Texas was just too good at executing on the ground that way.
well,
I mean, Wisner killed it, 110 yards from 15 carries. They said Blue had 14, and then also in the air, 30 receiving yards for Blue, and then. Outside of that, Quinn Ewers, I know there was a question mark about, him, and we brought it up too because even in the SEC championship game, it was sloppy and it was ugly.
yeah,
From both Georgia and Texas, but Ewers had moments where it was like, okay, dude, what are you doing? Where are you throwing to? But I just don't think the pass rush was enough from Clemson to really get him rattled. And when
yeah,
he's able to stand in there, I think he can deliver every pass. Every pass that you need an NFL quarterback to make, I think he can do that. But they didn't really have to. They didn't deal with too much pressure on it. And when the ground game's working that way, you don't have to lean on the pass as much. But he's still 202 yards passing. So yeah, and then yes, the touchdown I believe you're talking about at the very end when Clemson was making that rally. They had the momentum on their side, and he went out and Blue just gashed them. And it was a beautiful play, and it knocked them down. I mean, they were, within a touchdown, when that happened, and then it ended it. That they killed all momentum with that one ground attack, and it was beautiful. But yeah, Klubnik, he was dropping dimes. This dude was putting on a class. It was beautiful. 43 passes, 26 completed for 336 and 3 touchdowns. He did have the 1 interception, but still, ground game for them, though, I wasn't impressed with Clemson on the ground. I thought Maffa and them would have a little bit better of a game, but as a team, only 3.2 yards per carry. Not a great outing on the ground, but still not a bad battle for the 12th seed. Old Clemson coming in doing their part. Let's talk about Ohio State, Tennessee real quick, because that one got ugly quick. And we talked about it, in the previews that, it should be a close game. Ohio State just came off a really tough loss. Nico and the Tennessee Volunteers, they've had a solid season. There's moments they look good, and then others that they look, just kind of suspect, maybe pedestrian at times at certain spots. You got to say that for Trevor. But what did you think about this? And what were your feelings on this game?
Not having Dylan Sampson, I think was huge and really set Tennessee's offense back. Llama Lover, haven't been impressed with him all season. I just think they're very inconsistent offensively without Dylan Sampson. And Will Howard, played as close to a perfect game as you can as a quarterback. Yeah. And they were very balanced. Tennessee, there was really no answer between Judkins and Travion Henderson. They was both getting nice runs, and then Will Howard was just dropping dimes. There was really nothing Tennessee could do. I thought up front Tennessee was matched up well with Ohio State, but they just couldn't seem to get any pressure on Will Howard. And they've got a really big front four. Yeah, and it kind of shocked me that they couldn't get back there at all. Ohio State just had a good game plan, really. And I think when you pair that with Tennessee not being able to get anything going on the ground, it took the life out of them.
Well, you mentioned, Nico, and you look at his statistics from, this year, and it's just majority of the stats came from Vanderbilt, UTEP, North Carolina, NC State, when they were, their dog water earlier. It just not impressive from him. And, I know the bowl game last year, I thought that, against Iowa, he had a really nice bowl game. And I felt like that could propel him into a really strong season. But he had his moments of strength, but really it was not great. Scheme wise, him wise, it just wasn't good. 14 of 31 for 104 yards. Now I know Michigan beat Ohio State with 60 passing yards, but they were also able to run the ball well. And the defense for Michigan had a much better scheme against this Ohio State team than what Tennessee came out. They played a lot of man, it looked like. They were leaving guys on islands when, you beat them by bracketing them and having a strong pass rush. And what we expected from Tennessee early was that defensive line. How are they going to, push this kind of hodgepodge Ohio State line? But they held up, man. That O-line held up really well. And like I said, it allowed for Will Howard to handle his business, sit in the pocket, drop, really nice passes deep, and then for the running backs to get going. Henderson had a wonderful game. But yeah, I feel like between Nico having a rough game and then the game plan defensively for Ohio State, it just was a bad matchup when it breaks down. Doesn't mean that Tennessee, didn't belong there. Didn't mean Indiana or SMU to me. Like, we'll get into that here in a minute. But it's just matchups. They failed the matchup. They lost their individual battles, and then once it starts getting away from you, it's very hard to get back in it, because the leading team can press and they can pin their ears back and hit you while you're trying to press and be perfect, and that's so difficult to overcome. Anything else on the games, Blake, or on this game in particular that you want to drop in before we kind of talk about the playoffs and what everybody's fussing and fighting about?
Now let's get to the playoffs.
All right. So obviously the main thing is we went from 4 to 12. And the initial thing there is okay, I think we expanded too far. I think we've all said eight's probably the best. If you're gonna have the playoff, it needs to be eight. But they skipped it. They jumped it, whatever. We can't go back. I don't think so. I doubt they would.
They should.
They should, but hey, we're at 12. So, everybody's mad about the teams that got in. Indiana, they got exposed. They shouldn't have been there. SMU exposed. They shouldn't have been there. Tennessee, and then it kind of shut up. Okay, well, Tennessee got, their ass, they're clapped and like, well, what did they belong to be there? Did they deserve it? And that's where, when you're at 12 teams, you're going to have flawed teams get in. And we've said this year that nobody's perfect. There's not a single elite team, I don't think, out there. Ohio State played really close to it the other night, but again, they've also shown moments where they can get beat, and they did get beat. So it's just one of those. Hey, you got to get 12 teams. And earlier when we had 4, there was teams that if they got left out, I can see them complaining and bitching and crying about it because I think there's some more standing there. But when you're getting into the 13, 14, 15, like these teams are like, Lane Kiffin, that's dude, he would not shut up this week about how he should be in. Like, dude, like just stop. You're making yourself look bad. You're looking making, in my mind, the SEC look bad because you won't shut up. Just take it. It's not like you were completely wrong. You shouldn't have lost to Kentucky, in my mind. But when you look at SMU, yes, they didn't have a good win. They did sneak in over, Alabama. Alabama, you compare all these things. What do you think about this, Blake, in the situation that we're in? Is there a way to fix it? What do you think?
So there's so many different scenarios because you got to look at what is the overall goal. Is it to find the best team? Because when you get into the best teams, it's not always going to be. I mean, you're going to have teams that have great seasons that get left out, like SMU, like Indiana. And I know the argument is, like Bama had, and I'm not arguing for Alabama, I'm just using them as an example.
Sure.
They had the ugly loss to Oklahoma. They had the loss to Vanderbilt. I don't consider the Vanderbilt loss that bad, but they had it. But then you have teams like SMU who also, they had 2 losses, but it was to the ACC champion and to BYU. But then when you flip it and look at the wins, SMU had no good wins. Bama had their good wins. So there is an argument there for, who do you put in? And and you have those, when you have a 12-team playoff, I feel like, 8 would have been better. I feel like there's less arguing there about the teams. But where you start having problems is when you include conference champions.
Yeah.
All right, Clemson's a 3-loss team, conference champion. So, I mean, you want to reward that, but are they really one of the best teams in the nation? No. And everybody knew that going into the playoffs. So it's like you want certain things to matter, but if your overall goal is to find the best team, then in a playoff format, the conference championships, do they help you or do they hurt you? Because if like say SMU won that conference championship and they got in, helped them. All right. But to say you're not going to punish a team for losing it, I don't see how you can use it when it benefits you, but not use it when it doesn't go in your favor. Like if it's going to help you, then if you lose it, it has to hurt you too. It can't just be a freebie. Otherwise, why play the game? So it's you get into like, it's really tough to just make a decision on that. I mean, if the overall goal is to find the best team, I mean, there's other ways to do it, but people aren't going to like it because I think the only way to be able to do that is we're not going to have to, conferences. You're going to have to divide into divisions, and it's going to have to be more like the NFL.
Yeah.
You get into like, look at what the Giants did to the Patriots, coming out 6, beating an undefeated New England. Was it the 9 or 10-6 Giants really the best team in the league that year?
Right.
That's when you get into this territory, and that's what I was afraid of when we talked about it back last year about expanding the 12. And I'm not throwing shade, but there were people that are like, oh, you will never have in a 12-team playoff, you're not ever going to have to worry about these 3-loss teams and such getting in. Well, I mean, we're sitting here arguing about it right now because I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just too easy to not happen.
And for me, obviously, the season was crazy. You had a lot of teams that we wouldn't have had a third loss team get in, but everybody blew their opportunities. BYU screwed themselves, Iowa State screwed themselves. Multiple teams, end up losing when they shouldn't have. But I agree that I think the jump from 4 to 12 was too much. But again, for me, it's okay. We're here now. I don't want to dwell on, well, God, Eric can't enjoy the sport anymore because, and people are like, I can't watch football anymore. Yeah. And to me, it's okay. Well, it's what's here that I'm going to enjoy what's here because I cannot affect it myself. It's not, not like politics where you have some say in the matter depending on what you think. But, here it's we can't do shit about it except bitch online. And, a lot of people are really good at that. But when I look at the 12, I don't mind it. I really don't. I don't mind the 5 conference champions getting in. I still think it makes the regular season, matter to a point. Like you have to win that game. But then, like you said, if you lose that game, I mean, it might knock you out of the playoffs. If you win, does it really push you forward too much more? I don't know if there's a perfect, way to fix it. When I look at what I would do is simply just remove the auto buys for conference champions. And that way the seeding is going to be a little bit more, accurate as to your ranks. That way, the top 4 teams, I think this year would have been when Oregon, Georgia, Texas, and Notre Dame, I think, and they would have gotten the 4 spots. And now I know people will bitch about Notre Dame because they're not in a conference. I got that. They're already playing one last game. So there's maybe they still don't get that bid. It goes to the whatever. But I still think you do that. And then say like Clemson this year, they finished ranked 16, but they would still get that 12 spot because it rewards winning your conference. The other thing about it, with conference champions is when it comes down to that is we're all separated across the country. There's 140 teams now, I think next year. There's so many teams. You're going to be stuck in these groups. And we know the SEC is a strong conference. We know the Big Ten is a strong conference. I think the AC still has potential to be a strong one, maybe not to the same level. And the Big 12 as well. I think they've got a lot of good talent there. But you've got to prove it during the season. And we're all in these echo chambers. Each conference is its own echo chamber. Well, SEC is great because we play other SEC schools. Sure, got it. Big Ten's great because we play, other. It's just one of those things. It's going to constantly be the same argument over and over again. Yeah. I just think things are changing with the way the portal is and the way NIL is, that there's going to be a lot more talent spread out across the league. Even in some of these group of 5 teams are picking up guys that were committed to Power 4 schools that don't want to sit there anymore. They want to go start immediately. I feel like it's so broad and the parity is starting to get there as opposed to what we saw for the last 20 years with the SEC just completely dominating everything. I feel like the 12 teams fine. Adjust your seeding to where there's no auto buys and it'll get better next year. But as for this year, it's just matchups, man. To me, it's just, yes, they're all blowouts indicative of the entire thing being shit. I don't think so. Matchups. SMU, they won. The quarterback fucking threw the game. I don't know if he bet in favor of Penn State or what, but he had. Well, I shouldn't say that. Probably get sued, but whatever.
Also, though, yes, that's what we need is a lawsuit over a joke. We're shut down. Can't even log in tomorrow.
We're done. They take our StreamYard from us. Go ahead, Blake. What are you gonna say?
I don't remember.
Sorry.
I don't know. I lost my thought there.
I was just saying, I think the 12's fine. Just reseed it. Not after the games too, because I've seen people say that. But what were you gonna say?
I was gonna say, like, so I know a lot of people were upset about like the SMU and Indiana thing, but at the end of the day, too, by them getting beat like they did, that does, the committee I know sees that.
Sure.
Because that's kind of how they made judgments on, like, TCU and such in the past. And it only happens so many times before they will make a change. Like, they did it with the 4 team. People bitched, they changed it to 12. But you could have a 32 team playoff and someone's always going to be mad. That's just part of it.
Absolutely.
That's the world we live in. If we had a 50 team, 51 would be pissed. I mean, there's no way around it. Someone's always going to be mad. But what you were saying about like the SEC and Big Ten, it's not that I wouldn't even say that it's that people believe they're better. It's just history kind of proved that. And like when the Big 12 and ACC play against these other conferences, they typically lose the games. And I mean, anybody can pull up a random game where like Oklahoma beat Ole Miss or Oklahoma beat Alabama when they was in the Big 12, or Clemson beat so-and-so. But if you look overall and look at like the totality and the full records of it, it's not really close. I had them on one of our shows a few weeks ago. Or it might have been in our chat, but it was like the ACC when they played against SEC and Big Ten teams in like the last 10 years or something. It was like 81 games. They was like 23-55 or something like that. So when you have stats like that, it doesn't help your case when it comes to like making a playoff.
Yeah,
you're not going to get as many teams in because of records like that. And that's not being biased. That's just what it is,
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's what it is.
As they say, stats don't lie, but sometimes they don't.
That's changed now. That has changed now.
Oh,
stats
hold on.
do in fact lie. When it comes to Travis Hunter, stats do lie.
I don't know. And looking at Jacob, I'll answer some of your comments here in a minute. Good bit. I appreciate you commenting, of course. But it's just, I mean, I agree. Look, we all know that the Big Ten and the SEC are the best conferences. I think that's, especially at the top. I think the depth and the, that can get a little sideways because people always say, well, the whole conference is elite. They've got teams. Yes, the names, when you see it on the schedule, it looks strong. They've got good recruits, but doesn't mean the team is good. No.
Right.
So like when we talk about 3 lost teams, the SEC they were wrong because they had really good 3 lost teams. Okay, yeah, they might be good, but still, if to me, it's who you lose to and how. If Alabama had lost to, say, Missouri, and it was like a close game, I guarantee you they would have been in over SMU.
I think if Bama had the same losses, but we had just scored against Oklahoma, we're probably in over SMU.
I agree. And that's why I think people just avoid those circumstances and they just look at straight up, well, we're 9-3, we're in the SEC, we should get in. Or, even if it was a Big Ten team, say Michigan went 9-3 this year, and they were on the outside, but they'd lost to Ohio State, they lost to Texas, and they didn't have a great win on their schedule. And they got left out. People would probably be, hey, well, we're in the Big Ten, it's stronger. No, it's who you lose to and how. And yes, your wins matter too. And that's why, I think that Georgia win carried Bama so far. And then, even for Georgia after their losses, that Clemson win carried them really heavy. And that's an out-of-conference game. I know people complain about that.
I will say too, like, as a Bama fan, I do think Bama would have put up a better fight against Penn State, just because from a talent perspective. But if anybody on this earth thinks that Kevin Jennings was not just a clone of Jalen Milroe, and I mean Milroe looked to the T most of the season how Kevin Jennings played against Penn State. Bama could have just as easily thrown 2 pick sixes and been right in the hole. I do think defensively, Bama's a lot better than what SMU is. And the way Penn State plays offense, I think Bama probably would win that game just based on scheme. But it could have been the same outcome either way, just because of our quarterback play. So I mean, you don't know because the game didn't play, and it's always going to be a what if.
Yeah.
But I mean, like I said, as far as the best teams go, I didn't feel like SMU had anything to say they were a best team.
Sure.
But then again, Bama didn't really either. Did we have better wins? Sure. But those bad losses were ugly, and they do have to matter.
Yeah. And that's where I am at on the whole thing. I still think people just they don't like to talk about it. They avoid it, or they say, well, losses don't matter. The wins show you who a team really is. To me, the whole thing shows you how a team is.
Yeah, you got to look at all of it.
Jekyll and Hyde ass season, no doubt about it. But which team shows up? Sure.
That's why I really
resume matters.
And just to close it out, my opinion, the best formula, like Jacob said it a minute ago in the chat, the BCS. I think if we took it out of people, out of their hands, and let the computer use a formula that takes everything into account, your wins, your losses, if you're on the road. I remember back when like the rank 4 or 3 team is playing their last game and they're trying to get style points.
Yeah.
I mean, you was doing everything you can because the computer factored everything and there was no bias in it. And I mean, I do think that is the fairest way to select the teams, and if the BCS had have selected the top 12, I've seen people say this is what the BCS would have picked, but I've also seen those people post that, and I've seen different outcomes from different people. So I don't know if someone has the actual algorithm that it used. I don't know who would have that or how they would have that. But I do think that's the fairest way. I would like to see either a 6-team or an 8-team playoff using the BCS to pick those teams.
Yeah, and for me, I don't mind 12. I still, like you said, I agree. I wish it was 8, but with 12, I don't mind it. I agree. Take some of the bullshit discussion out of it, or give us a better criteria, like a more straight up. And then, like I said, the reseeding. I don't want to do the reseeding after the first round. To me, that's stupid.
That is ridiculous.
I know people talk about it all the time, but to me, it's just put the seeds in. Don't do the auto buys for the conference champions. No, the regular season matters. The best teams of the top 4 get their buys that they deserve from being the top 4 teams, and then the rest drop in and you play your ass off to get to the next round. And to me, that shit's fun, and that's where it would be good and it can be great. But a lot of the discussion again is just salty people. That people get angry. When you're talking 13, 14, 15, these teams, you start losing the ability to bitch about, well, we were wrong. TCU back in 2014 when they got jumped by Ohio State because Ohio State blew the fuck out of Wisconsin and they jumped in. They ended up winning the national title. But still, that TCU team's like, hey, what did we do wrong? We did what we needed to. That's why you jump from just answering a question from Jacob on there. I didn't think there was anything necessarily wrong with the 4 team until Florida State got screwed for losing a quarterback. I know it changes the team, but look at Georgia. They lost a quarterback. Has anything affected them? No, because we're in the 12th team. It doesn't matter anymore. Or TCU earlier or whatever, what have you. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of teams that I think had, reason to say, oh, we could have gone in. Georgia last year. People talked about Georgia last year not getting in, even though they lost to Bama in the conference championship. It's just one of those things. So there's ways to go about it. I don't think the doom and gloom is, it's fine. Everything's going to be fine, guys. Just enjoy football. The game played on the field is still the same. Yes, some rules change, whatever. Still football, man. It's enjoyable. Just chill the fuck out, enjoy some football, and they'll figure this out. Complain, do your thing. Yeah, I mean, Jacob, whiny ass FSU had to ruin the 14 playoff for everyone. Oh my god, I love it. Like,
if we can get a big enough poll going on Twitter and get Elon to share it, And if we can get Musk involved, maybe we can change the playoff.
That's all we need. We
That's
need
what
Daddy
we need.
Elon in
Tag
there.
Elon. Tag Elon. Lord or Vice President Elon is what they're calling him now.
And like Blake mentioned in the show earlier, the powers that be see this stuff, and they see everybody's comments, and they, there's guys out there that have some pull that are talking to people, and really, I wish there was a central government because the NCAA is a joke. I wish there was some sort of governing body to, deal with scheduling, and to deal with all this stuff.
I don't say this as a homer, but I keep seeing the post about making Saban a league commissioner.
Sure.
If you listen to what the stuff he says, and I'm not trying to be biased about it at all, I just think his format that he's laid out makes a lot of sense if you go read it about, the way players are paid, how the transfer portal should be, how the season should be, like the dates and when games are played and such. The transfer portal, when it should and shouldn't be allowed. He lays out a really good thing for the game, and I think it would be a good thing to put somebody like him, and it don't have to be like a sole league person like Goodell or anything like that. It could be a multi-body governing force or whatever. Have some checks and balances, sure. But I do think that is where we're at. There's got to be some sort of formed like governing college football body to oversee things, because it's still so unclear, and we've known this is coming for 3 or 4 years now, and there's no parameters on anything.
I feel like
toss up.
Criteria changes yearly. Somebody commented on Twitter named Derek. I'm looking at it right now. Because we were talking about the metrics of computers. He said Bama and Miami should have been in, Indiana and Tennessee should have been out according to these metrics. Strength of schedule, all this stuff. I'll share it on the page, and Blake, I'll send it to you. But yeah, I mean, there's so many metrics out there. I agree. Like they're in the world of advanced stats and all. I don't think that necessarily should determine everything. These advanced statistics, because I think some of them had like Ole Miss, like the 6th ranked team, 5th ranked team. I'm like, hold on now, that completely gets rid of some of these losses. But I feel like there's a way to do it with statistics, and I agree. You take out a lot of the arguments that are being had right now.
Yeah,
if we have that. So that's our thoughts. Comment on our again YouTube, on Twitter, whatever. Let us know what you guys think. I know it's been an ongoing. It's kind of exhausting to look at it all the time. Everybody's just complaining, doom and gloom. If you don't put forth an actual way to fix it, or like some reasonable answers, then just shut up about it. I don't want to. I'm tired of hearing just the random. Well, this team should have been in. This they would have been better. This team should.
Why?
How do you
tell
know?
us why?
Are they hypotheticals? Don't mean anything. You gotta actually play the games in front of you and do the schedule that you got. But we do appreciate you guys. Blake, anything before we shut her down?
I'm good.
All right. I'll probably screw up the outro music, so I think I'm just gonna end it. I don't know. Our usual audio guy. He's not in. Trevor, we miss you, buddy. We'll see you on the next show. I know with the holidays, Christmas being here, it might be a little different on our show schedule, but just keep an eye out. We'll let you know on our socials, and help us out. Subscribe to our YouTube. That helps us big time. And then you can also chat with us on the StreamYard page, because I don't check my phone necessarily while we're doing the show. But we appreciate you guys. We'll catch you around. Enjoy the bowl games. It's Christmas time. Merry Christmas. We'll see y'all later.
See ya.